Hey guys, Steven here with SCS Pickleball, and today we're going to be diving into the new long-handled J2NF paddle. We're talking about a handle of about 6 inches in length, the same core mechanics as the original NF, but just with a longer handle, and we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of this in comparison to the original NF. So without further ado, let's dig straight into it. So the J2NF long handle comes in at a price of $195. You can use code STS10 to save $20, making it just $175. STS10 is going to be my non-Kevlar specific code on Honolulu's website. So you can use code STS Pickleball for anything Kevlar specific and STS10 for anything carbon fiber or titanium specific. I know it's a little confusing, but that's how they have it set up. Of course, there is no affiliation with Honolulu Pickleball. All these thoughts are my own. So you know, no bias at all in any of the reviews that I do ever. So let's go ahead and talk about how this compares to the original NF, right? So with this longer handle, and it is quite a bit longer, we're talking about pretty much a measured length of about 5.95 inches. So we're talking about 6 inches in length on the handle. Quite a big difference from the original sort of like 5.35 inch handle of the original NF. You know, that was pretty tight on two-handed shots. You know, it was okay if you're okay with overlapping a bit. You know, overall, this is definitely easier and more comfortable for two-handed shots. Absolutely. You know, the downside is going to be the fact that, of course, with a longer handle, the face is going to be scrunched up a bit, right? So you're not going to have as much surface area. So the sweet spot will be a bit tighter. It's actually not as big of a difference as I was expecting it to be. You know, I was actually expecting this to be pretty tight in sweet spot in comparison to the other one because the face in the other one is quite a lot larger. And then the taper is, you know, a bit different as well on the original NF. But I was really surprised with this paddle. I think the sweet spot is really nice. You know, of course, it is tighter than the original, but not so much so. You know, it doesn't feel like a polypropylene core sweet spot. It still has that full foam, sort of larger, elongated sweet spot, which is really nice. Definitely elite for a 6-inch handle with this particular type of face layout. And with that, you know, and we'll talk about this when we get into the metrics, right? With weight setup, spin, power, pop, sweet spot control, and then we're going to dive into my final thoughts on this. But I will say with a longer sort of 6-inch handle, you do get more whip on the ball. So this one does actually have a pro of being a little bit more powerful than the original NF, just because of that bit of whip that you get with a longer handle. So let's go ahead and talk about how I weighted up this paddle, right? So stock, we're talking about a 107.98 swing weight, 6.52 twist weight, which is pretty decent, and then 8 ounces stock weight. So pretty optimized, to be quite honest, with a 6-inch handle, you know, with this much stock power and pop and plow through, you know, 107.98 swing weight is really nice. It gives you a lot of room for customization, which is nice. So 6.52 twist weight with that low of swing weight is actually very, very highly optimized already. So I went ahead and added 2 strips on top of each other of 1 gram per inch tungsten tape. Shout out Pickleball Effect. You can use code STS Pickleball on Pickleball Effect's website as well to save some money on the tungsten tape there as well. But yeah, so 3.5 inch strips, 2 strips on top of each other right in the center of the edge of the paddle right there. So we're talking about 7 grams on the right side, 7 grams on the left side in the exact same spot on both sides, right in the center of the flat side edge. That raised the metrics to a swing weight of 116.37, a twist weight of 7.93, which is quite elite at that point, and then 8.5 ounces static weight. So we're talking about a swing weight of something that I really like to optimize for in that 116 to 118 range. I feel like that's like the sort of ideal range for really any paddle these days. It's very balanced and just has a really nice organic feel to it. That coupled with a 7.93 twist weight is incredible. So the stability on off-center hits now is just amazing. The plow through is really good, and it does make the sweet spot better. We're going to talk about that in a second. So, and then we're talking about an 8.5 ounce static weight now. So a little bit heavier, but that 8.5 ounce range is kind of where I'd like to be. So 8.4 to 8.6 ounces static weight is ideal for me. 116 to 118 swing weight is ideal for me. And then, you know, anything in the 7 to 8 range in twist weight is going to be ideal as well. So 7.93 on twist weight is pretty elite. You know, it does make it a little bit harder to do, you know, flick rolls and kind of maneuver the paddle, you know, as far as twisting it goes. But I will say, you know, the stability on off-center hits is incredible at that 7.93 twist weight range. So super quick, I just want to talk about some theory as far as weighting goes these days. You know, originally back in the day, me and a lot of the other reviewers, we were really optimizing for mitigating swing weight while optimizing twist weight, right? So we were using maybe the throat up into the flat side edge or just the bottom of the flat side edge. These days, what I've been really understanding is the fact that, you know, where you place your weighting really optimizes the sweet spot and the position of the sweet spot, right? So the lower you have your weighting, kind of the lower you can sort of pull the sweet spot down, or you can optimize the sweet spot in the lower part of the paddle. But what I've really been understanding recently, and this comes from more of a feel and more of just like an experiential aspect of pickleball for me, has been that really what I've been wanting to do is sort of optimize the center, or really optimizing exactly where the sweet spot is on a paddle. So on an elongated paddle, I might move it into the center, or maybe even just a touch higher than the center on the flat side edge. What that's going to do is it's going to make its natural sweet spot larger, right? So for me, I'd rather make the natural sweet spot larger because that's where I'm hitting the majority of my shots. I don't really want to make the sweet spot and on the lower area of the paddle where it's going to feel a little bit less dead. You're not going to have as much energy return there. I don't really want to make that larger, right? Because the amount of balls that I'm hitting in that area are far less, right? So what I'd really rather do is I'd rather take the sweet spot that it already has naturally and organically, make that larger, place my weighting setup near that area, make that sweet spot larger, and make the part of the paddle that I'm hitting more often larger and more plush, and give it a little bit more stability in that general area. So that's a quick little breakdown on what I'm currently understanding as far as weighting setups go. And so real quick, the best way to be notified every time I drop a new video is to hit that subscription button right below the video, hit that little bell notification next to it, and you'll always be notified every single time I drop a new video or a paddle review. It also helps my channel like crazy, and it's just a free way of saying thank you. And I appreciate every single time anybody subscribes to my channel because it helps my channel like crazy. So anyways, let's jump right back into it. So next up, we're going to go ahead and dive into the spin on this paddle. So the spin comes in at 2287 RPM. I believe the spin on the original NF came in at 23, I'll throw it up on the screen. I think it's 2352 in that range, so hyper elite. But this is still absolutely elite spin. So 2287 RPM is a very, very good. Power on this came in at 9.5, the pop at 8.9, the sweet spot comes in at 9.3, and the control is 9.1. And then of course, I'll throw up all the metrics for the original NF as well, so you can kind of compare the two. But the big thing that you're going to notice is just the power is just a little bit more on this, and the control is pretty relative. So, and I'm sure you can see from these metrics why it is a little confusing and trying to figure out which one I like better, because they are pretty relative in play. The metrics are all fairly relative, right? You get a little bit more spin with the original NF. I choose the NFT as my particular choice out of the three options there. But, I do really like this paddle a lot. I do play with the 2E as much as I possibly can. I've been forcing it a lot on my returns. I've been forcing it a lot on my drops, and I'm really trying to dial in that aspect in higher level games. In the 4.5 range that I play in generally as far as recreational play goes. So I have been pulling this out of my bag more than the original NF. I think that if you have the original NF, I don't think that there's really obviously a need to upgrade to this. I don't think it's an upgrade. It's more of a side grade and more of a subjective side grade, generally speaking. So, if you're looking for a Gen 4 paddle that has, elite tier spin, very close to elite tier power. We're talking about maybe 10% less than a Boomstik, especially with weight added. And of course, the Boomstik already has weight added. So apples to apples would be with weight added. You're not talking about a very large difference at all. I think this is an amazing paddle to go for. Of course, the price always also comes in at a very decent price as well, right? So $175 for these metrics and that amount of stock spin is very, very solid. So I would say, if you're also thinking about this in comparison to like a Rhombus Quanta, right, which comes in at $100, the only downside to the Quanta is there's a lot more dead spots around the perimeter. The sweet spot on the Quanta is quite a lot smaller in comparison to the NF series, and also in comparison to the Boomstik. So when you do hit the sweet spot on the Quanta, it does feel very relative to the NF series and the Boomstik. It actually is very, very solid, especially when you add weight on the perimeter. The only downside really with the Quanta, again, is just going to be the sweet spot. It does die off very, very hard around the perimeter of the paddle. So if you do hit a dink, a little bit off center, maybe in this spot, or just a little bit outside of that sort of tighter sweet spot, it does die off. And I did have a few dinks that didn't even make it over the net because I kind of whiffed the sweet spot, which happens more often than I would care to admit. But, you know, honestly, I think the sweet spot on this is larger. I think, you know, if I was choosing between the two and I was okay with spending an extra $75, I do think that the sweet spot advantage here is quite a lot better than the Quanta, to be quite honest. Especially after playing with the Quanta now just very consistently for a while, I have noticed that that little die off around the edge is fairly harsh. You know, if you hit the sweet spot more often than not, you know, you could grab a Quanta for $100. But I do think that this is a great buy in the $175 price range. You know, I probably would recommend the majority of people to go with something like this or the original NF or NFT over like something like a Boomstik and just save the money. You know, you're talking about a 10 to 15% difference in power, very relative feeling off the face, and you're even starting out with a touch more stock spin with this elongated NF and with the original NF or NFT or NFK. So those are the final thoughts. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, definitely consider subscribing. That is the most beneficial thing that you can do for my channel. Helps my channel grow, helps me reach more of an audience, and it also helps me get more paddles from manufacturers just like this so that I can give you metrics and breakdowns just like this. So definitely like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you hated it, leave a comment down below and I'll try and respond to any of the questions that come through and try and help you guys navigate this process. You can click over here and see the recent top 5 best paddles of 2025. And hope you guys have a freaking wonderful day. Catch you in the next one.